Can I get a marriage-based green card even though I entered the United States on an F1 visa but never went to school? Hi, I'm Jim Hacking, immigration lawyer practicing law throughout the United States out of our offices in St. Louis, San Diego, and Washington, D.C. When I'm talking to someone who has immigration questions about their green card, I always start with how they entered the United States. This is really important because USCIS looks at you as a complete person. In other words, they look at your total immigration history when figuring out whether or not to give you your next immigration benefit. So when you apply for a green card, very often they're going to go back to the beginning of time when you first entered the United States. They're going to try to find out all the details of how you got your visa and how you entered the United States, and then they're going to consider that in deciding whether or not to give you a marriage-based green card. So a lot of people think that if they marry a U.S. citizen, then all of their worldly problems, all of their immigration issues are wiped away simply because they married a U.S. citizen, and this is not always so. And so one of the situations that arises when people do apply for that marriage-based green card is the fact that they entered on an F1 student visa but never went to school. So let's reflect back on what happens when you apply for a student visa. When you apply for a student visa, you promise to the U.S. government that you have enough money to afford to come to the United States, to support yourself, and to go to school. In fact, the government does a pretty heavy scrutiny of your finances to figure out if you're going to be able to financially support yourself. So I can't tell you how often I'm contacted by people who came on F1 student visas and say, Jim, I had my money lined up and then it just didn't work out. And so I stayed in the United States, but I never actually went to class. USCIS really doesn't like this. USCIS views it as fraud or potential fraud, and they're going to push pretty hard at your green card interview about the circumstances of your promises, your broken promises, and why you didn't go to school. They really, really don't like it when people enter the United States on an F1 visa but never actually attend class. Now, there's a big difference between people who come on an F1, go to school for a few years, but just drop out because of finances versus those who never go to school. So I think that distinction is really important because, as with so many things in immigration, it all comes down to intent. What was your intent? And so if you never even really tried, if you never reached out to the school, if you didn't do anything to get started, if you didn't move to the city in which the school was located, which we've seen happen time and time again, they're going to come after you pretty hard. And what's going to happen is they might charge you with a misrepresentation. They might say that you misrepresented yourself, that you lied at the State Department when you applied for your student visa. Even if you didn't, they still might claim that, and then you're stuck with having to not only prove that your marriage is legitimate, but that your U.S. citizen or green card holding spouse would suffer an extreme hardship if you were forced to go back home. If they refused to give you the green card, what would happen? And that's a whole other issue where you're going to have to apply for a waiver. You're going to have to prove hardship on the part of your spouse, and it's going to be a big old mess. You don't want to go down that road. So if you have come into the United States on an F1 student visa and never attended classes or just went for a short while, didn't really finish a semester or a year, and you're thinking about applying for an immigration benefit like a green card, you most likely need to hire an attorney. You don't want to go through that alone. They're going to come after you hard at the interview. They're going to even ask your spouse about it. They're going to want to know all the details of what this person applying for a green card has said about their immigration status and about why they came to the United States in the first place. And the whole financing fell through at the last minute isn't going to cut it. They've heard that story before. I've heard that story hundreds of times. So if I've heard it that many times, they've heard it thousands and thousands of times, and it just makes them mad. So if you find yourself in that situation and you're looking to hire an attorney, give us a call, 314-961-8200. You can email us, info@hackingimmigrationlaw.com. We have a Facebook group. We'd love to have you join it. It's called Immigrant Home. So if you want to join us there, there's thousands of immigrants talking about the immigration process. We'd love to have you join us there. Also on our YouTube channel, we go live 3 or 4 times a week on our Immigration Answer Show, where I try to answer as many immigration law-related questions as I can. And we also have hundreds and hundreds of videos where I talk about all kinds of immigration questions and benefits, all that good stuff. And I really want you to check it out, and feel free to join us on the show if you have a question that you think would help other people learn about the immigration process. We will see you next time.